Hello, my name is Nevin Dawson, and I am the Professional Development Program Associate Coordinator. I work with Katie Campbell Nelson to manage the Professional Development Grant Program and our state coordinators. I first got involved with SARE as a grad student when I worked on a project with historically underserved farmers in North Carolina. I later served as the state coordinator for the University of Maryland, running projects in soil health, and then I gradually transitioned into my current staff role. I love seeing the diversity of education models used by our grantees and state coordinators and the passion for personal and organizational growth throughout every level of SARE. I'm going to talk a bit about who can apply. We accept applicants from all kinds of organizations, including extension, colleges and universities, for-profit businesses, including consultants and farmers, municipalities, nonprofits, tribal governments, and state and federal departments. Applicants and their host organizations may be located outside of the Northeast region as long as the project activities and the audience served are located primarily within the Northeast region. Here's a chart of all 6 of our public-facing competitive grant programs. Note that the partnership grant is not one of the larger grant programs, and we won't be focusing on it today, but it does have a similar range of eligible applicants as our larger grant programs and can be a great starting point for projects that need more groundwork before being able to justify a proposal in one of the larger grant programs. These bottom 3 are the ones that we will focus on today. First, I'll talk a bit about the differences between each of these programs. The Research and Education and Professional Development grant programs both require a performance target. You can think of the performance target as the outcome of your project if everything went exactly to plan. The presentations on these programs later on today will have a lot more detail on what this means. Each program funds a different type of work or audience. A research and education project must include a robust farmer education program that will result in measurable on-farm changes, and those would be described by the performance target. And these changes should lead to greater sustainability. The focus on farmer behavior change is a key requirement of this grant program. The project may also include an applied research component that supports the education program. This is not required. Applicants are generally researchers, farmers, educators, and others who work with farmers. A Research for Novel Approaches project must include a strong proof of concept applied research component intended to confirm the benefits and/or feasibility of new practices and approaches that have high potential for adoption by farmers in the near future. Applicants are generally researchers of all different kinds and can come from any of the eligible organizations previously mentioned, such as community organizations, consultants, or traditional research institutions. A professional development project provides education for educators and service providers who work with farmers. These service providers then use what they've learned through participation in project activities in their work with farmers, as described by the performance target. Applicants are generally people who work with farmers, educators, and/or other kinds of service providers. The minimum funding level for each program is $30,000. There is no actual funding cap for these programs, but proposals funded typically request no more than $250,000 for research and education, $200,000 for research for novel approaches, and $150,000 for professional development, depending on the project's complexity and duration. Now I'll talk a little bit about the similarities between all 3 of these large grant programs. For all of them, the project duration is 1 to about 3 years. A pre-proposal is required for all 3. All 3 require collaborators. This takes the form of an advisory committee, which is not required to be defined until the full proposal phase. And the advisory committee will consist of at least 2 farmers and 1 agricultural service provider. It is required that this committee provides input on project design and implementation. Expenses that are eligible for Northeast SARE funds include labor, materials and supplies, or things that get used up throughout the course of a project, services, meeting and training expenses, subawards to other organizations, indirect costs up to 10%, and project-specific equipment. Ineligible expenses include those costs used to start or expand farming operations, like regular farm equipment like a tractor, or land or structures. These are not allowed. So, what is a pre-proposal? A pre-proposal is a preliminary concept document that allows SARE reviewers to select the most promising projects to be invited to submit full proposals. These are generally only 1,000 to 1,500 words in length. Pre-proposals are intended to save time for both applicants and reviewers. Applicants don't have to develop the full details required for a full proposal just to see if the idea will fly. And reviewers don't have to spend time reading all of those details if they know that the idea or the concept is not fundable. Pre-proposals are required for all three of the large grant programs that we're talking about in this video. Applicants are only invited to submit full proposals if the pre-proposal has a strong database justification. In the research and education and professional development programs, a clear and measurable performance target and effective approaches to achieving that target are also required. Projects must strive for wider adoption of sustainable practices and must be clearly grounded in our outcome statement. An individual project leader or principal investigator may not submit more than 2 pre-proposals per grant program per year, so that's a total of 6. If you submit multiple pre-proposals and more than one of them is invited to submit a full proposal, you may only select one of those invited pre-proposals to submit a full proposal across all 3 programs. Here are a few more details that may help you with planning your pre-proposal. Northeast SARE does not require host organization approval at the pre-proposal phase, which means that you don't need to submit a form signed by your organizational official. Although, keep in mind, your organization may have its own policies about internal review, even for pre-proposals. We no longer ask for any budget information in the pre-proposal. However, a detailed budget is required as part of the full proposal. Funds are reimbursed on a net 30-day basis. This does mean that your organization must make initial payment for project expenses, but we work hard to process your invoices as quickly as possible. Matching funds are not required by SARE. They are not encouraged and do not increase a proposal's ranking. Results of funded projects are part of the public domain. Contact us as soon as possible to request disability-related accommodations. Here is the timeline for our large grant programs. Pre-proposals are due on August 2nd at 5 p.m. Full proposal invitations will be sent out on August 29th, 2022. All applicants will be notified at this time of their status, whether a full proposal is invited or not. As a reminder, all applicants will receive a summary of reviewers' comments about their proposal. It is intended to support you in developing a strong full proposal or for modifying your pre-proposal to submit next year, or as an indication that the idea you submitted is not a good fit for our programs. The full proposal deadline is October 25th, 2022, 5 p.m. The award decision will be made in late February of 2023, and all projects will have a contract start date of March 1st, 2023, although you may choose to begin your project activities at a later date. Here's an important note. As part of Northeast SARE's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Strategic Plan, we will be examining our grant programs and procedures and may make structural changes to our grant-making systems. To accommodate this work, these grant programs that we're talking about today may not have a call for pre-proposals in 2023. Thank you. And at this point, we will pause for questions.